Do you want to start with a little bit of a short intro? I see 259 Paladin. Like what kind of stuff you're working on now, and what I can help you out with.
Yeah, sure. So I started when I was a little kid, the same old story
Mm-hmm.
most people have. And then my buddy got me back into the game like a week and a half into Destiny, and
Mm-hmm.
that's when I made the Pally. So I'm fortunate enough to have a decent amount of free time to play, like 10, 12 hours a day if I really want to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so a lot of the time I'm just grinding. So that's why I'm actually 260 now. I hit 260 yesterday.
Okay, congrats.
Thank you,
Welcome to
thank you.
Grandis.
Yeah, I'm realizing very quickly that I'm gonna have to stay in Limina for some time while doing the dailies. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much a short intro. I don't really have anything other than that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just excited to play the game with some friends, and it's a different game than what it used to be. And I played a lot of private servers too, like
Mm-hmm.
old school MS. So it's pretty refreshing. I like the UI and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. So so to say that you're saying eliminate like your kill speed in Grandis is not exactly what you want it to be, since the character is relatively new
Yeah, that and
and familiars.
my the sack,
Mm-hmm.
sacred symbol it's like level 1, so I hit like a
Yeah.
potato, and especially if I don't have my damage gear on, it's like probably 3 to 4 shot.
Yeah, for most people, even if going in there, even if they, strong, you'll definitely be going in there with damage gear in the beginning. It's really the active choice on, do I want to smash levels or do I want to smash like value for my account more? You can obviously do a little bit of a balance of the two, but even for the people who are strong, you'll still need to wear damage gear in the beginning to be able to compensate for the sacred loss, and then even as the sacred power gets going, you'll rather keep this damage gear on and then go into Burning Cernium and then go into Hotel, rather than to go into full drop gear and then stay in a lower level area, because then the difference of your EXP rates is going to be less than with Limina, and then you'd rather do either Limina for the value or whatever is the highest level area you have access to for the EXP. And it is basically like a factor of, you'll lose, typically you lose something like, I want to say like something like 30 to 35% of your meso typically. More, maybe like closer to 50% if you can't wear meso obtain. So like the first scale up would be like trying to wear meso gear, but not drop rate gear, because drop rate gear will always be a detriment, right? Like either you just want to be in Limina, or you wear it and then you might as well be in a higher level area where you can kill faster, because really the only thing you're getting a little bit more of is nodes. That's essentially the only thing you're getting drop rate for. So you want to get
Right.
enough drop rate out of your Inner-Ability, Holy Symbol, and Familiar to get all the bags, right? To cover the meso drop rate for that. But the item drop rate itself, you typically keep that very, very low. So yeah, it is a little bit of the choice of like, do I want to leave Limina in the sense like no more droplets, no more familiar cards, less meso. And most people stay into Limina, again, because they have to build Sacred Power, of course, at least until 265, but some people to 70 or even to 75, depending on how long it takes them to get the familiars that they want.
Oh man.
Yep.
That's okay. That's a long time.
Yeah, that's why I've been pushing and sending in tickets and talking to Nexon a lot about trying to introduce familiars into Cernium. Because right now I feel like Limina is too much of a bottleneck, and we had the bottleneck of Bye Bye Station way back. Maybe you probably weren't playing during that time, but then we had Arcana as a major bottleneck for like Kana farmers, and now Limina is a huge bottleneck for people staying there, overstaying, I would say, because of familiars and how that system works. So I think we would definitely benefit as a whole as a game from getting familiars in Cernium, not just because we want more, but because I think it'll be better for the flow of the game to move people through the stages, because yeah, Limina is so full. People who want to get value out of their Kana farmers are there, and then literally
Right.
anyone with a main is there. Yeah, there's some map reworks going on, but I don't think it's going to be enough to really dissipate to break up the masses. It's still going to be, Limina is going to be a huge bottleneck. So I was happy with my Demon Avenger. I was in and out for just 3 levels, and then immediately, or I guess for 7 levels, but like in and out pretty quickly, and then was able to move into Cernium because of how strong the character was funded. But yeah, but now I do have the problem of no boss familiars whatsoever. So that's a big downside, and you have to think about the contingency there. Is it like, are you going to bring up other characters to 250 to 255 to funnel familiars into the main character? Because you will get like twice the amount of EXP basically. If you start training properly in those areas, you'll get 2x or more the EXP compared to staying in Limina. So it's definitely more value from your totems EXP wise. Yeah.
I heard like 15% at like 260 in Limina per totem, and then like basically 30% or more at Cernium, right? So
yeah, depending how well you're doing, I think I'm going around, like if everything is going well, it does go down pretty quickly, that percentage, like at 260, but then at 261, 262, that percentage goes down pretty quickly because of once you're passing 260, the amount of EXP that increases per level starts becoming more significant. And the fact that you can't say like, oh, I got 30%, you know, per totem or something at level 260, then at 269 you get about the same. That'll be a big difference compared to like 250 or 259. That's closer together relatively.
Yeah, I saw 259 to 260 was like 1.3 trillion EXP, and then 260 to 261 is like what, 2.9?
Yeah, well, they recently redid, right, how much you need from between 250 to 260. So 260 is much more achievable now. They definitely toned that down, but then 260 still has, and upwards still has those old rates. And yeah, it takes a bit. But I think, yeah, for my DA, I'm getting somewhere like 26, 27%. But that's considered very good at my level. So you're more likely going to be like somewhere between 20 and 25, which is still good, of course. You know, 4 to 5 totems per level. That's still decently fast. That's still, you know, 4 or 5 levels a month with your totems. That's still pretty decent. But yeah, as soon as you get to 270 and then 275 and then yeah, rates just tank.
Well, I guess building off of this conversation, if you scroll to the very bottom, my familiars are all there. I forgot to include, or sorry, no, I accidentally threw away my large drop familiar, but I was fortunate enough to get another one recently, so I do have that. And then I also have a 30% epic boss familiar. For some reason my snippet tool stopped working, so I tried to put it in at the end, but
didn't work. Okay.
Yeah. So that's 2 things to note. So I was thinking like, I think what I want to do is just do my dailies on my Pally, and then once the new month rolls over, I can start using totems in Limina again. Try to get at least 1 more boss familiar, and then it'll be back to just doing dailies until I can actually start farming in Cernium, or leveling. But that was the general goal I had. I just wanted to know if that was like optimal, I guess. I know that there's no one right answer, and it really depends.
Yeah, if that's your, like, as long as you're aware of the options and that's like kind of your plan, then that's like a good place to start. And as long as that you feel good in that, and it, you know, it gives you energy in the sense that it makes you want to log in and want to play, and at the end of the day you feel like you've made progress, then that's really all you can ask. Because the further you go in the game, the harder it is to come across that, and the more easy it is for it to feel like, oh, I missed out on a whole bunch of stuff today. So as long as you feel like the things that are important to you, and that goes into like what your general goal is, but it seems like you're more just, you know, enjoying the game, hanging out with your friends, and like trying to do stuff together. You're just gradually moving forward to the game, and there's not like one specific thing that you feel like you need to be reaching, right? That's generally, I feel like, a more carefree way of going through the game, so you can focus more on just enjoying yourself rather than I need to do this next week because then in a month I need to be here so that in 2 months I can be doing this, you know. As long as that doesn't start seeping in, you can kind of, you know, stay calm and just enjoy yourself.
Yeah. I guess coming into this game, I had a lot of experience on private servers, and my mental in those games were always pretty bad. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to have a different mindset with this one and really just treat it as a game. I want to have fun, but I'd like to do it efficiently if possible. Yeah. So that's why I'm here.
Oh, that's cool. Just to clarify, when you're talking about the large drop, that one is not shown here, right? Because people in the chat were talking about your large drop rate and item combined, but I'm pretty sure you mentioned it because it's not depicted here. So you have a 30 boss and a 30 large drop on top of these ones.
Correct, yes.
Yep, okay.
I accidentally, I didn't know that the item and meso drop was only 60% as opposed to the 100. So I was like, oh cool, and then I threw away 5 large drops, only to realize that I had fucked up. And
Yeah,
then,
you definitely did need one of those at least, yeah.
Yeah, my friends all gave me mad shit for it, but I got lucky, so I got bailed out my next one.
Yeah, thank God, yeah. Yeah, it's 100%, and then the other ones are 60. So if you don't need the meso drop rate, which in most of the cases you won't need, right? Because you'll get the drop rate between your invulnerability, between Holy Symbol, and between your equips. That'll cover the meso drop rate, so you don't need the meso drop rate part from the familiar anymore. So really only the item drop rate part is functioning. And then you're just comparing 60 and 100%, and then, well, then it's a no-brainer. This dude's a lucker dog. It sounds like he's got good stuff going. I mean, at 260 starting from the beginning of Destiny, or like roughly the beginning of Destiny. That's a lot of progress that you've been making. So is there anything, what do you specifically use, would you say, in the game to kind of track your progress, to feel like you're still moving forward, kind of thing?
Definitely the tier of bosses that I can complete. It's been about, this will be my 3rd week of doing hard lucid with a group of buddies. We all met up recently. Like I have the duo that I started playing with, and then I met another guy who also has a duo, and then we all met another guy who also has a duo. So now we're a party of 6 with our own little
that's cool.
server. It's been really, really fun, and we all kind of hit the cap of what we can accomplish as a duo, and getting it, like doing a hard lucid when you're barely reaching the entry requirements as a duo. It's
very rough.
It's not fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's nice to be able to clear like this content without actually having to be carried. But yeah, right now I'm kind of in the Arcane waiting room. I've been farming a lot of meso, so I have about 55 bill in the bank, and I don't have a single Arcane piece. I'm 260 with full abso, so I feel kind of bad about that. But I take it into account that it's just the amount of hours I had available to grind.
Yeah, you're leveling faster, so your level is going to be outpacing the other general goals that you might wanna get to. Yeah.
Yeah, the buddy that got me to play, his main is like 247, and he's like, "Yo, like, you wanna wait a little bit?"
Yeah, that's a decent gap. I'm seeing that you have some coins pre-made.
Yeah.
In general, for Maple, it's, if you have the room for it in your inventory, it's typically better to keep those resources more separate. Because now they're hard committed. So now those will coins will specifically have to go to a shoulder, pretty much, right? Or a weapon. But if you keep them as droplets, there's droplet exchange with NPC. So then you can keep them more flexible and move them to whatever type you need. Plus, when you get the armor box, you can get any of the armors in it. So you could get an armor box from Lucid and then just pick the shoulder from it. And then you wouldn't ever need the specific coins from the Will shop. Which I'm not saying that that will happen. You probably will still be able to work around that, but now you've slightly more limited where your resources are going. And since we're in reboot and you don't have tradability, right? A lot of times you want to keep your options open as much as possible so that you can stay flexible to whatever RNG comes out of the game.
Right, that makes sense. Okay, so I guess I haven't put too much into it. Like it's like 1.5 equips.
Yeah.
So I think it should be okay.
Yeah, it's probably fine. I mean, technically, like the 12 for the Lucid, that's already one piece, right? And then
I wasn't sure if you could like choose the equip from the box. That's why I kept it as the coins. But now that I know, I'll probably just pick something.
Yeah, so it's either an armor box, and you can pick any of the one you want. So including the drop from the other boss, and then or it's a weapon box, and then you can pick any of the weapons that your character can equip. So for you, you'd have 4 options from the weapon box. Have you given that any thought on what you would pick there?
Yeah, that was actually one of my questions. So it's gonna be two-handed, right? So either the sword or the blunt weapon. And I really like the aesthetic of the sword. But I saw in my skills that I would lose, I think it's 10% IED.
Yeah, and
I think I gained like mastery.
Yeah, it's a little bit back and forth. Like the mastery definitely was more of a thing in the past when it would increase your minimum damage. So that's nicer to be able to like one-shot a little bit faster. I think the main value at this point of going a sword is that if you ever want a job change, you don't have to remake your weapon, because hero also uses it, right? So if you would switch between hero and paladin, you could just keep using your weapon. But in that sense, I think if you want to keep that option open, I think it makes more sense to go one-handed sword and the shield, so that your secondary can also transfer over, and then you have like a more mixable badge. But if you know for sure you're going to stay paladin, I don't think there's a huge difference. I think it's like somewhere around a maximum of 2% final damage, like all the way in the end game, between going two-handed sword and two-handed hammer. If you really like the aesthetic more, I don't think there's a huge problem with you going two-handed sword. Like you said, you're mostly trying to play for fun, and if that's the aesthetic you're looking for, that margin is not going to make it so that whether or not you can actually kill a certain piece of content, you know, because all of the most difficult things are going to be with a party, so those small differences are going to be averaged out over 6-player party, so that's going to be a negligible difference. But like mathematically, the two-handed hammer would give you the most damage output, but again, like I'm certain it's fairly close. So
okay, I kind of told myself like I believe IED gets less important as you get later into the game, right? So I was just telling that to myself. I don't know if it's copium.
That's a little bit copium, yeah. Kind of yes, kind of no. IED itself, even though you have like diminishing returns on the visual for sure, and you have 50% built in, right, as a paladin, so that's a huge difference. It's still, it gets, I think, underestimated later on into the game that people try to min-max hardcore on their stat and on their weapon attack. But like a little bit of IED, even, you know, on very low efficiency, can still have like a quote-unquote final damage change difference, that even if you reduce like the penalty that you take from final damage by like 0.1% or something, that's still going to be more efficient than like 1 or 2 stat. That's probably going to be the same efficiency of like 20 or 30 or 40 stat at that point, because you're going to be at like 60k stat at that point, right? So percentage-wise, it's still probably going to do better, but it gets harder and harder to find sources of IED that you can add without going at the cost, you know, without the opportunity costs of attack or of boss damage on the other side. So in that sense, it becomes harder to stack it effectively. Yeah.
Okay, maybe then I'll just go with I'll just use an NX cover and go with the hammer, because
that's the other thing.
I don't think I'll ever switch.
Yeah, that's the other thing I wanted to mention, is that a lot of times people will pick a certain weapon and then after a while they'll just cover it with NX anyway, and then it's kind of like, then it's kind of unfortunate that you that you pick the one that you like the look of the most, because sometimes people have like a weapon and then Anvil does another thing and then NX covered, and I'm like, you know, different choices could have been made here, you know, to keep it vague.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you're trying to go for the efficiency eventually, there's probably some kind of NX stuff eventually that you can cover it with that will kind of make it look like a sword anyway, or something pointy, and then, you know, you can have it both ways at that point.
True. All right.
Yeah, okay, so we talked a little bit about the bosses in Arcane. So in general, you take bosses and how far you get with those to kind of keep track of progression, and I guess kind of on the bosses you can already do to see how fast you can do them and to still kind of feel that progress.
Yeah.
Okay. And so Hard Loose and Hard Will is like the peak of what you guys have been doing so far?
So Hard Will, I've actually been getting carried. My buddies are doing, or they haven't attempted normal will yet. It's mostly like we're just getting into H low mien as well. So will, I wouldn't say we're able to consistently clear hard every week.
Yeah,
we're
a little bit in different stages like, with the 6-man, or so then for that you have a slightly different party, I guess.
No, like I have a friend that's just carrying me through Hard Will. And then I'd say we just got to the point where we can consistently clear Lucid, so I don't think we'll be able to touch Hard Will, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's mainly a level and an arcane power thing, and if you're, you know, starting to build up, you probably arcane power, you're not all the way there yet, probably, right?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if I included my arcane. I can send a screenshot. Oh wait, my snippet tool's not working, but it's 1190 arcane force.
Okay, so you just passed
11.5k.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, 11.4. So 1140 is when you do the max bonus damage, the plus 50% to will, so you're just past that point.
Okay.
And then level 250 is the level of the boss, and at 260 you deal optimal bonus damage to targets. Up to plus 10 levels is another. What is it? Is it 2% per level? I think, right? Is it 20% final damage? I think.
Yeah, I think so.
So, in those two senses, and because you wait, why is it not working? Because you are a paladin, of course, you're also bringing a lot of ID to your party. So if you know for sure that you're going to be playing with a certain amount of the same people, they can definitely scale down on how much ID they need to bring to the boss fight, because you bring a 50% all the time, which is significant, right? So you're familiar with the basics of ID and how that's calculated?
No, actually, I just know that bigger is better and you hit bigger numbers.
Yeah, but there's like a sweet spot, right? So bigger is better to an extent, but like I was talking about, there is competitive advantage to some things, and there is reduced efficiency in the sense of if you're using sources, like for example, if you use ID familiars, you can say bigger is better. But if your familiars get you to like 99.9% IED, and you also have bossing familiars, you probably increase your damage by switching out an ID familiar for a bossing familiar instead, right? ID is pretty much like armor penetration if you've played any other video games ever. And more armor penetration is better in the sense that a higher percentage of your attack gets committed to the target. But if it goes at the expense of more damage, then there is a sweet spot where the balance between how much damage you build and how much penetration you build can be too far to one side or too high to the other. So you don't want only damage and no armor pen, but you also don't want only armor pen and no damage. Both of those are bad. There's always like a kind of a sweet spot in the middle that you want to aim for. And
so this is like the WSE like balancing act, right? For attack, boss damage, and ID?
Yes, exactly, yeah. And then you want to be aware of like where does ID come from, and where do your sources of IED have the lowest opportunity cost? Like where does getting IED give you the most functional damage increase without going at the expense of other sources that could also be giving you damage? So where do you get the highest efficiency out of that stat? And there you want to maximize on the IED and then see how much is left to take in other sources. So like set bonuses like Superior Golics are always going to be part of the thing, so you can always add that into the calculation, right? If in the beginning when you hit a 30% IED familiar like you have, and you have one boss and one IED, and then you add like a healing, that's a very good setup. It's a very balanced setup. And then that's why characters typically very early on do roll for IED in their WSE just to get started, because they won't have a huge legion yet, right? You can't get that 40% out there easily. You don't have the Superior Golic set yet, and that takes a lot of IED away. And then comparatively, IED will get way more value in your WSE than attack or boss will, to a certain point. And then once you start introducing like large amounts from your Legion and your Link skills, large amount from the Superior Golic set, then you start weeding off of the ID from your weapon, secondary, and emblem, because then comparatively attack percentage, which has way more limited amount of sources, and boss damage will start increasing in value compared to the ID and kind of take over in what you want. So if you're at any given time like looking like what is my optimal, and you ask someone what is my optimal, and they're like in the end game, there is almost never, with the exception of like one or two classes, almost never going to be IED in your WSE. But if you're asking someone in mid game and someone from end game is giving you answers, they might give you a bad answer, because in mid game you definitely always want at least one line of IED on WSE. Sometimes even two, sometimes even three would be optimal for you. And I guess that gets us into how IED is calculated. So the IED takes basically your percentage of IED that's functional, gives you that amount of armor penetration on the boss's armor, which is called their PDR, their physical damage reduction. So if most bosses, and that's why these percentages are based on what bosses are you fighting, how much armor do they have, and your comparative advantage for your IED, and what sources are realistically accessible for you as a player in this stage of the game. So you don't want to go too overboard because the bosses don't have too much armor, but you also don't want to go too low and then be able to commit none of your damage. So most of the bosses here have like anywhere from like around 50% armor, so any kind of IED that you get is totally fine. However much armor is left on the boss after the ignore from your IED, ignore enemy defense, that is a percentage damage reduction to you. So if you have 85% functional, right, so you're adding up your visual and then any kind of extra skill buffs, boss debuffs, like your, it's not called threaten anymore, right? What is it armor break or something?
I don't even know, but it's the one that reduces the defense, right?
Yeah, I think it's called. I think it's just like an orangey armor with like that's like crushed, right? As long as that debuff is on, so that goes up to 50%, which and every noble demand, someone says in chat, that might be what it is. So every source is calculated individually and just gives you that percentage of the size of the source of how much you have left to reach to get to 100%, basically. So let's say that you have 80% and you add a source of 10%. You add 10% of the missing 20% between 80 and 100, which is 10% of 20% is 2%. So you go from 80 to 82 functional IED, basically. So since you add 50, you always add half of whatever is left to get to 100. So if you're at 90%, you go from 90 to 95. If you're at 80%, you go from 80 to 90, right? That makes sense?
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your entire party members, if they're like kind of on the lower end here of how much IED you want to be at functional, that's fine because you will carry them to the finish line and they can maybe push a little bit harder on straight up attack and a little bit lower on the IED because they know you're going to be there, and part of your job is going to be to keep the boss debuffed so that they can apply more of their damage. And for you, that means that you don't have to go as high as the IED visually in your stat window. You can err a little bit on the lower side because functionally you will be applying more IED whenever you're hitting the boss. So that gives you a little bit more freedom, but it also gives you more outs when you're using cubes and stuff on your WSE because more combinations will have favorable outcomes for you. If you go a little bit higher on the IED there, that might mean that like with your Legion, you can go fully into boss damage. Let's say you roll only boss damage on your WSE, now you can move your Legion into IED instead. And you can use your hyperstats, which link skills you use, and where you fill your grid in your Legion board to fill in the gaps of whatever potential you're rolling on your WSE, because that's more expensive and that's less flexible. But where you fill your Legion grid and your hyperstats, that's very easy to redo for a very low cost.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so let's say that the later stages you get, and once you're basically Lotus and Damien and everything beyond, everything has 300% PDR, so 300% armor. So that means if you were to keep the 85%, ignore, and that's like your fully functional number, and you're hitting a boss with 300% armor, that means you're only ignoring 85% of that, which leaves 45%. So you get 45% damage reduction, final damage reduction. So you only add 55% of your damage. So just over half of your actual damage, which means that every single upgrade you have to make almost has to be twice its base value to be able to, feel that upgrade when you're attacking a boss. But if you're at 93%, 93% of 300% leaves 21%. So then you deal 79% of your damage. So just in that ID difference, what visually looks like just 8%, which looks like a very small thing, you go from dealing 55% of your damage to 79% of your damage, which is mathematically almost a 50% final damage increase, right? From 55 to 79, because it's plus 24, which is just a little bit below the half of 55. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So even what looks like just one little line of IED and not really doing all that much can actually have a huge impact on your your final damage, which means that the value of all of your other upgrades that you're making gets increased by a factor, and therefore their efficiency goes up. So the efficiency truly lies in balancing out all the existing stats. So that's where the progression grid came in. And I tried to keep track of, I looked at a bunch of different classes. I looked at a bunch of different input from a lot of players. And I came up with this so this takes into account how expensive is it to make certain upgrades, what is the access that you can realistically have, and, how strong is the content that you're trying to fight, and just, and everything congruent with each other. And it's not that you have to exactly hit all these numbers, but if you're roughly near those numbers, then you're on the right track, and you know that you can spend a little bit more time in terms of the efficiency on the things where you're lacking a little bit more. And I find this the most fun approach for me, and hopefully for you as well, because you try to keep it fun, but you still, efficiency, not in the sense of like I need, 100% efficiency, but you just want to know that you're not making any glaring mistakes that end up hurting you more, and then you just have to brute force your way through it, right? So as long as you keep looking at these numbers and you're like roughly in the ballpark, you don't have to brute force anything, and you can use this as kind of a guide of You know, what should I be working on? Should I be working on my Legion? Should I be working on Star Force more? Do I need to, you know, wait for backups? Do I need to grind levels out, because our levels are very important? Now, what you've already talked about a little bit is that you probably are finding that your levels are kind of outrunning all your other stuff, which means that you can actually get a lot of value. If you're doing something like Will, you can get final damage out of that, which means that you don't have to go as hard on your equips, right? Or you have a good kit that gives you a lot of functional IED. That means you don't have to work as hard on your potential and some stuff. But what that does mean is that it's a good time now to, if you spend more time on those other things, where you can get relatively more value out of your time that you spend there than maybe on grinding. So that might be the hard part, is maybe letting go a little bit of the things that are fun and doing a little bit more of the things that are unfun, because those will relatively give you more value. But you don't have to, right? It's always like, if you feel like you can keep going and it's good enough and it compensates, then you're golden. But anything that gives you final damage is, you know, is important. So level is
Right.
is pretty important. But now we're going to run into Sacred Power, right? And then Sacred Power I added here to the bottom recently. Again, that's a final damage thing, right? Because in the same way that bosses have have PDR, basically the arcane power, the arcane monsters and the sacred monsters in Grandis, they kind of have their own form of PDR, and you need to ignore that with your own arcane power and sacred power. So it's a way of giving us power creep in a sense, because sacred power is more stat, but in the other sense it also slows us down a bit and makes us you know, do more dailies and rebalance where you spend your time, so that you can't just brainlessly float on ahead and just destroy everything in one hit. You kind of have to start back up from the ground.
Yeah. So I guess that's exactly where I'm at. So for the longest time, I had my sights on 260, and I'm like, I need to hit it. So I kind of just put all my time into it.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm here, I'm like, I very quickly realize, okay, now what, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm in Arcane waiting room.
Mm-hmm.
Can't train in the new zone. I still got to work on a lot of the other bosses that are at the lower level.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have any bossing mules, so that 55 bill that I've saved up is just blood, sweat, and tears
Mm-hmm.
of like weekly dailies and grinding.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have buddies that, you know, in 2 months time they catch up, and it's with minimal effort. So I'm like, oh man, like, should I, you know, put more time into bossing mules? And if you look at my Legion, I have I think I like a 220 Dark Knight.
Mm-hmm.
That was my like original character when I started Reboot, like when Reboot first came out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's at
Or
like
220 here, yeah.
it's like 13 to 15k stat.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
it's
solid.
basically already ready, but I just dislike playing it. Like, I don't know. I really like Paladin, so
Yeah,
I've been
okay.
really ignoring it, and I shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then the marksman I made for ignition, and then recently I changed my mind and I made a shadower, because I was thinking in my head, well, you know, down the line I'll just pump all my totems into my paladin, and then once I run out of totems, because this month I ran out at like the 10th, or on the 10th day,
Mm-hmm.
and then the rest of it from 256 to 260 was just totemless at 1.5. It was really painful, and I wasn't making as much meso as I'd like, so I was like,
Yeah.
you know, if I make a shad, then all those hours I can just pump it into the shadower and make decent meso, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, taking out of the equation the amount of initial capital you'll need to invest into it to get it to that point, right? It always comes down to,
True.
will you, you know, if you need to invest 10 bill or something into it, like how much time is that? And then how much time are you going to need to recapitalize on that investment? Like you said, you say you make 100 mil more an hour, but it's 10 mil to invest, then you have to put at least 100 hours into it before you start seeing a return, right? So that's kind of like how you want to look at it. I think it's definitely a good, that idea is good, that if you know that you're playing this much and you're running out of totems this early, you can definitely comparatively per hour get way more value out of your time meso-wise by starting to build up boss mules. A lot of boss mules will only need somewhere between like 2 and 5 bill to build up, and they can easily make about half a bill to like 800 mil in the span of half an hour, and then, you know, comparing that to off totem rates, that's going to be way better, right? So that'll be the other thing. And the main thing is also, you know, more arcane, more Legion power, right? More Legion coins, so allow you to get more coverage of your totems and of other stuff that you're doing with Legion coupons. And then, of course, you know, the link skills will get up to level 3. That's nice. And then going past, because you're at now, are you at 6k Legion? Yeah. Going from 6 to 8k is really the difference between having a full grid and being able to fill your grid. Of course, I'm like past 9k now, so it's a little bit of a poor comparison because you're not going to be immediately at that. Plus, I have lab pieces, but the amount of stuff that's filled is way different at 6 and at like 8 plus. Just, yeah, all of the pieces in there are going to be slightly bigger, and then way more pieces in there because you're at 20, yeah, you're 29. And then you can go up to 38, so 9 more pieces, all 4 shaped, so that's 36. So that's almost a whole square already. And then from the characters that are in there, there's probably, I'm going to guess, probably like 15 or so that are in there that aren't at level 200 yet, right? 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, something like that. So those are all going to be one bigger as well. So you're covering like 50 more squares, basically. So, again, but that's not something to do overnight, but that's something to just steadily keep working on. And as you're building up more boss mules and as you're participating in more events, you're just going to get more free levels like that. And you're going to find more characters that are actually way more fun to play in 5th Job than you thought they would be, because 5th Job can really just change the identity of a class between like level 199 and 200, right? And then you could be like, oh, this character would make an amazing boss mule. And as your Legion grows and your Link skills grow, more characters will come online as bossing mules way faster because they will get the fundamental IED, boss damage, critical rate, critical damage from your grid and from your Link skills. And so that will be able to complement their kit earlier on, and it'll really be just like you can just play the characters that are fun for you, or you can play characters that are brain dead. You know, you want to be, oh, I just want to log into a character and just like press one button and just blow up the boss and log out. There could be some characters that do that, or there can be some more complicated characters. Maybe you want to, you know, practice your hands with the Shadower and be like, I want to play a character that takes a little bit more input to be able to capitalize on that kit, and then you can kind of, you know, build a portfolio of difficult or easy characters. But I think you're at the point now, especially if you're playing that much, that you definitely want to start looking at scaling up in terms of your income, and that bossing mules is a very good idea to start doing that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I guess that'll be my next project then, because what I like to do is I kind of just set a goal and then I finish that goal, however long it takes me.
Mm-hmm.
So for the longest time that was 260, but my rough plan was to go for 265 on the Pally,
Mm-hmm.
and then go for 7k Legion during Night Troop.
Yeah.
Or 7.5, depending on, you know.
Yeah, how well it goes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I would definitely try to. So if you're doing a totem now, you just do one totem like, well, after the month changes, right? And you can see how much EXP you make. Then you can easily see like, okay, this is how much I'm definitely going to make if I finish my totems. So this is how many months it takes at totem pace to be at 265. Am I okay with that? Do I want to make it faster? Then you need to do some off totem stuff. If you're going to play for the very, very long term, there's always the capacity or the possibility of getting a second account and getting totems on there and bringing it into your map and then just doubling up on totems. Since you said you have like 10 or 12 hours a day to play, that could be the way to go if you want to maintain your pace, and if really grinding out on your main character is what you value a lot and what you have a lot of fun with. You don't necessarily have to stop there. You can scale up in that way, but you have to be willing to put up with that difference, right? Because then if you're going into level 255 area, you'd have to have at least a 255 in the other account to be able to enter the area and totem yourself. So that's the cost of doing business on that. But eventually, that might be worth it, right? Because, you know, 20 days on without totems versus at least squeezing in like another 34 hours on totems, that could be worth it to you. But again, that might come down to doing a little bit of math and being like, no, never mind, this is never worth it, or this is actually something worth considering.
I did consider it very briefly, but when I kind of thought about raising a brand new account to 255 with 0 Legion, I was just like, dude, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun.
We do have Hyperburn coming, right?
Yeah, that is true, and so that's why I considered it, but I guess we'll see depending on how I.
It totally, yeah, exactly. I mean, you're playing a lot, but it's also possible that you're just playing this much for, you know, like a few more months or something, and then you're kind of, or like a month or so, and then you're gonna like tone it down a little bit. That's possible as well, but then you want to make sure that, you know, the longer you're going to be playing, the more these things are going to pay off. And if you have like another account and you just make like a few level 120 characters just for like, you know, some experience links and some crit rate, and then you just slam a character up to 250, and then you squeeze out some more levels with some free level up potions during events, whatever, 255 is decently achievable. But again, if you think your main character by then is going to be like closer to 270 and is going to want to leave Limina, then your character is going to get to go to 260 to be able to totem you in Cernium, right? And then you have to keep chasing, so it's definitely up to you how efficient you think that's going to be. I'm just putting it out there as an option, but it seems you've already somewhat considered it.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
But yeah, for bossing mules in general, you're considering, you're looking at some characters, and it really comes down to which bosses you want to do, right? So the main thing that's going to help you with your bossing mules and get them online is building out your Legion more, like I just said, because that's just base funding for all of your characters, and it'll save you from having to invest a lot of money, and also save you from having to invest too many nodes. Most of the bossing mules you probably can get online with like something like 200, 250 nodes. They'll probably be able to do Lotus of Damien and everything below, especially if you can get access to guild skills, like a guild with at least like 30 skill points with like 2 maxed skills. That would be really good value compared to anything else that you can do for the character.
Okay, so I guess I'm realizing that Legion is much more important than I thought. I knew it was important, but...
Well, we have no transferring, right? We can't transfer stuff, so the only way that you can fund... In non-reboot, you could make like training gear and just transfer that training gear, and then all your characters are stronger. But since we don't have that, the way that you can fund all of your characters at once is building your Legion and Links. That's kind of the only way to do it. The other way is like resources that you can trade through the storage, so that would be Mezzo, that would be nodes, stuff like that.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. Yep. Should I go down some of the questions that I have?
Yeah, sure. We can do that. Make sure we get through all of that.
So, my first one is I don't have a Pap Mark. I did transpose my Sweetwater Pendant. I think I got pretty lucky with... I only used like 3 flames on it, and then I'm seeing a
trend here, yeah.
Yeah, so I got lucky, and then I was like, you know, I'll settle with that, and then I just transposed it. But the monocle is kind of just chilling in my inventory, and what I use for boss damage is just the aquatic letter accessory. It's like drop gear, so it's basically negligible. I only have 1 black bean mark. I don't know how, but I just only have 1. So I was, do I push that to 20 or 17 and use that as like damage gear?
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. 20 is always a little bit of a weird number, but I think like 17, typically like the intervals for Star Force is like 10, 12, 15, 17, 19, 21. Those are typically the intervals, and then 22 eventually. 10 or 12 in the beginning, baseline stuff. 15 only if you want to get past 15, and then 17, of course, because it's the highest you can safeguard. 17 and 19 is pretty reliable, pretty low risk, and very good value for your investment. Usually that's the thing you do before you go really crazy on cubes, because you'll just get way better returns on 17 to 19 Star Forcing. And then you just hold in a 19 to 21 full jump, because I think if you get a 17 and then eventually a 19 black bean mark, that's probably good enough to keep, and then to decide if you want to go beyond, it probably might be better to go back into monocles and make a 21 or 22 monocle, or you go into an eye patch, or you find a Pap Mark and then go transposed to 21 or beyond. Being stuck at 20 on the bean mark would be a little bit weird, so I probably aim for 17 or 19 there. And I think that's the move, yeah, for the piece, yeah.
Okay. Do people use like a non-transposed monocle as like they dump a lot of resources into it? Because I don't know what disappears after you transpose. It's just the potential, right?
Typically, it's most likely that you have at least a 17-star monocle or bean mark, or a 19, or even a 21 before you even see a Pap Mark. That is very possible. Some people get lucky and get one very early when they only have like a 17-star eye accessory, so then they can very easily say like, okay, pause on that one, re-roll it for drop or mezzo. Typically for drop, right, maybe the aquatic has mezzo, then that eye becomes drop instead, and then the other one takes over the power value. And that's also a way that you can scale up between the 5-4 setup of 5 meso 4 drop into more than 4 drop, into like 7, 8, 9 drop eventually, so that you can get closer to the max of 200% drop from equips, so you can get closer to better drops when you're bossing, like Black Beam Marks, like Dominator Pendants, Primals, you know, Kana Treasure Rings, that kind of stuff, and then eventually pitch boss pieces without having to extra make a whole bunch of items now, but you kind of take those pieces that kind of lose their value as you change up the damage gear to even better damage gear, and then those pieces, those legendary pieces, kind of lose their function. Some people will, some people won't. It's a little bit of a problem. Some people will be like, oh, but I could get a Pap Mark at any time, but I don't think I've ever really known anyone to really, you know, to sit on like everything being like 21 stars and like 19 arcanes and still sit on like, I don't know, like a 17 monocle because the Pap Mark could drop one day, or a Bean Mark. Eventually you just send it further because you just get tired of waiting, and you shouldn't wait forever around for that thing. I've known, yeah, there's definitely more than a handful of people that I know that ended up getting their eye patch before a Pap Mark, so, and that's already rare as hell. So
I tell myself that it's client-sided drop, and my client just doesn't have it.
Yeah, it's just bad seed. Is that right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
My next question, you kind of already answered this, but it's like buying the arcane gear versus waiting for boxes. If I have enough droplets and I have enough coins, then I might as well just buy the piece, right? Because I can just choose whatever.
Yeah, and the set
droplets don't serve another function.
No, yeah, no other function there, and the set bonuses were changed so that you can, even if you have one piece, you can start moving in one piece at a time instead of Abzo. The Star Force is there, the main thing though, but if you have 17 Abzo, changing it with a 17 Arcane is always going to be an upgrade. And the only thing you have to look out is carefully like matching the potential for your glove. But other than that, just one piece at a time transferring is going to be an increase always. So if you get a box, you can pick whatever. If you have enough droplets, you can pick whatever. The biggest question that people have is like, do you go for the weapon or you wait for a weapon box, because that one has double the value. I always say I've never really known anyone to really to really be sorry about having bought the weapon, just because of how huge of an upgrade that is. And even if you, the only thing that can happen is that you can get another weapon drop, but then you just have a backup for, you know, going to 19. So, and in this case, because of the boxes, you always at least know that you get the right weapon, because that was a kind of a problem before with Arcanes, is that you could get a drop of something that you didn't want, and then that put a lot more stress on like, do I buy one or do I not buy one, and then possibly negative outcomes. But now, because of the boxes, you can always just fit kind of whatever you compared to what you already have. So there's more outs.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, cool. And then next question I had was 21 versus 22. And then I think you also kind of answered this one, but I should set my arcanes at 19, and that's just like a good holding spot until I have, I guess, plenty of backups, and then push for 21. And then later just roulette to 22 once I have everything done.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of push for 22 star from communities, from people, from certain streamers, Hamza. But eventually you definitely want to get to 22. And if you just look at the mathematics, pushing one item to 22 at a time is just like, from a point of efficiency, is just not good. You're opening yourself up to a lot more options of not hitting it and then losing all the progress that you've already made, versus just getting a bunch of 21s throughout your whole account first. Usually that already eats up a whole bunch of your backups, and then you're even more at risk immediately if you're trying to go for 22 to even get back to where you were. So a lot of times, so financially it makes more sense, and then a lot of times for backups it also makes more sense that you just get into 21 realm first, and then you just circle around to other upgrades, and then by the time you circle back to go for 22s, you will have rebuilt your backups and you can have lowered your risk again. And that's why I was talking about that 17, then 19, then 21, then 22 kind of thing. is because it's kind of the same if you look at your hyper skills, right? So for hyper skills, usually I say, you know, like level 5, level 8, and then 9, 10, 11, like one at a time. So it's like you start at the most important stat, you get it to 5, then you go to the next one. They're all 5, and then you go back to the top of the list, you go for 8, and then you work your way down again, and then you go back to the top and you work your way to 9 again. It's kind of the same with your equips. It's just like, okay, CRA, you can get the most backups. You get that to 17 first, so you don't have to safeguard. It's the cheapest, and you make a lot of gains from it, right? The only thing that really, I think, kind of goes out of the place is like, do you go from 21 to 22? You probably go from 21 to 22 on your CRA. Well, you go like 19 to 21 on your CRA before you go 17 to 19 on the Arcanes, right? That makes sense? Because that's just too far apart in terms of backups and in terms of cost because of the 50 level difference. But that's probably like the only exception where you will make 2 jumps like on CRA before you make 1 jump on Arcanes, just because you need longer for backups and they're just too pricey. But other than that, it's like,
right,
yeah, you're probably going like 21 on CRA and then like 21 to 20 like transferring on the superior Golic stuff, right? Make sure that's all there. If you have enough Golic setups, backups, immediately tap the 21 to 20 so you're good on that. And then the Arcanes probably go 17 to 19, and then you circle back to like CRA to get to 22, and you know, there might be some like singular projects, like maybe like a Twilight Mark or like a Slime Ring, stuff like that. This is when you're in the situation where you have enough damage in your account. You can already pretty much do what you want, and this project is only going to be worth it if you go all the way immediately. So like, I think Twilight Mark and Slime Ring are pretty much that, because they're going to be there for a long ass time until you can tap like a pitch to 21, right? And that's going to be like forever. But you already have enough damage, and it's also a side project, so you can kind of just send it on Star Force. If it doesn't go, it doesn't go. You already have your damage, so you're good. But if it does go, then you know that you're going to be committing your, you know, your flames and your potential later. So for those, I would try to be like 21 or nothing kind of things, so that you know once you're done, you know. Yeah.
Right. The last Shining, my Meso, I was only making like 600 mil a totem, because it was when I was much lower level, but I farmed as hard as I could, got to like 15 bill, and then I managed to 17 star, I think, all my Abso, and then I 21 starred my CRA. So I guess next priority would, this is my next question, is like priority upgrading gear. And then I have quite a bit of questions for this one. So I was wondering, because right now a lot of my event rings are my damage rings, and they just happen to roll triple strength lines. And so I felt kind of bad about re-rolling it or rolling it away.
Definitely,
so
yeah.
Right
you want to keep that, because event rings base stats, they're better than like a superior Golix ring until you get the set bonus, right? They're always kind of equivalent to 17 stars, sometimes maybe even a little bit stronger than 17 stars. So that's kind of how you want to look at them.
Okay, so then I guess a follow-up question would be, when would I look to transition these guys into drop and Meso? Would that be after I get like my slime ring, after I 21 star like a Kana treasure ring and stuff like that?
It could be. They could become. They probably will become like what I was talking about when they were like temporary damage ring, and then because you get even stronger damage equips, they become the possibility for scale up on more drop, right? I think you're already at a lot of drop though from rings, so they might kind of lose function completely for a while, or you might be like, you know, maybe the Silver Blossom ring, the set bonuses, kind of whatever, the, you know, the event ring is way better. But what you kind of want to avoid is min-maxing super hard on your drop and meso gear on their base stat, because it's not really that important. You know, as a percentage of your total damage output, it's not that big of a deal. You need your weapon secondary and emblem. You know, you're going to have arcane gear, high Star Force CRA gear. Your nodes are going to be max your arcane power at the ass at that point. Like, whether your you know, your drop rate ring is a Silver Blossom, or whether you re-roll your what is it, like your Eternal Flame ring, that's not going to make any difference in whether or not you're killing the monsters, right? That's just too small of a difference. Unless you're really trying to like min-max wearing meso gear, being able to train in Burning Cernium, right? That could be the thing. but that's not as likely. I think what's more likely that's going to happen is that you can kind of, depending on the amount of backups, you can kind of see the rings now as a project of like, you know, going all the way and kind of skipping those steps, especially if you look at the amount of funds you have, and potentially with, you know, Shining Star Force hopefully coming around in January. That could be one of those things where you're going pretty much making a bunch of 21s. Like that could be the next, that's probably the next step for you. So if you have enough backups for like Sweetwater Pendant, you could do that. More likely than that, you're probably, the first thing is probably going to be a belt, right, to transfer into the Superior. And then hopefully you have belt backups or enough coins at that point to tap the belt to 21 as well, and that'll be one of your projects. And then probably the E-Ring, because reinforced E-Rings, easy to get enough backups. And then probably right after that is Kana Treasures and Meister Rings, depending on how many you can craft from Meister. Maybe you can already make some and get them up to 15 during the no boom room, so you can cheaply get stuff up to 15. And that's also where you're going to be looking at spending your money for like getting Arcanes up to 15, right? So you can just send them without having to worry about safeguarding. That saves you a lot of money. And then probably, so after the belt and the earring, again, I'm going off of like the average of what you get for backups. It's probably going to be Kana Treasure and Meister, and then just tapping the 21 and then seeing what you get. You get your Kana Treasure to 21, you get a Meister to 21, then you look at how many backups you have left. If you have, you know, try to get at least one more to 21, so you can transfer and do the same thing like you did with the belt and the earring, and do the same thing with the Gollux ring, basically. And then hopefully you're looking at like a 20 or 21 again Superior Gollux ring, depending on your backups, and a 21 Kana Treasure and a 21 Meister. And then, you know, maybe you have a Slime ring by then, that'll fill up your 4th slot. Maybe you have enough Gollux coins left and you can go for the reinforced, or you just slam whatever is your strongest event ring in at that point. And that, again, that ring will be a little bit weaker compared to the other ones, but if all the other ones are 21, then it doesn't matter. You know, on average, you'll be fine, because that 4th slot ring is going to be replaced either by Slime, either by an Oz ring later, you know, so that 4th slot is a little bit of a free slot anyway.
Okay.
So most likely you're not going to be re-rolling whatever rings get replaced. But again, if you want to min-max, you might, you know, replace like the Silver Blossom ring, for example. And at that point, you can also decide, like, am I going to get the Kana Treasure with the drop in Mezzo and Strength? That's a really good, solid piece. You're probably going to be wearing that a lot. So since it's applicable to multiple situations, you could try to get that one to 17 if you have more backups there, right? And then that way, it'll give you a little bit more damage, but in 3 different situations. Like if you're going for Mezzo, if you're going for drop, if you're going for Mezzo or drop in a higher level area where you also want to get Strength, right? Then, yeah, they'll have more applications. So then you have relatively bigger value return.
I think the reason why that one is 12 stars is because I tried to get it to 17 and it boomed, so I just left it.
It does do that sometimes, yeah. Kind of treasure rings notorious for trace creation. I think last event I blew up 14 of them. They don't.
Oh my god.
Yeah. You think you have so many, it can't possibly go wrong, but you know, proves you wrong.
Okay, so then I guess my next, the next piece I kind of want to upgrade is my belt, just because I have so much belt fodder.
Yeah, and your inventory is probably getting pretty full with it as well, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's quite annoying having to go extract much sooner than I would need to.
Yeah.
I didn't even know how many belts I should have.
Yeah, probably if you have like 11 or 12 is probably fine. Everything over that you can probably start disassembling. So if you have more than 11 or 12, I would say of one kind, you can start disassembling the other kind, right? Because then you couldn't transfer hammer anyway if you start running out of those. So I'll probably get rid of the Princess No ones and of the reinforced ones, because just in pink bean ones you have enough. And you could probably get rid of like some of the pink beans as well. I'll probably get rid of like 6 or so of them. 11 to 12 is a pretty safe bet, and especially if you're going to wait until like Shining Star Force or the next 5, 10, 15, you could still make like 10 more if you really want to before that time.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay.
It's more like because you want room for like all the Kana Treasures, all the Dominators, pretty much all the reinforced, all the backup belts for Superior and earrings for Superior. You always want to have room for those, right? Those are more important. So. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, you were starting to say something.
Yeah. Oh no worries. I have one Superior belt backup, so does that mean I just pumped Star Force into the belt that I'm wearing, and if it booms, then I transpose it or whatever, and transfer it, and then I start working on the fodder belts.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned transpose, because you had a question about that, but we kind of skated past that. The stats that you keep when you're transposing is so you keep the Star Force -1, you imprint some bonus damage onto the target, and then you keep your tier of your potential, but it re-rolls within your tier.
Okay, but that's not applicable to Gollux, right? That's just
Yeah, no, because you mentioned transpose here, but you meant transfer hammer, but it just connected because you were asking earlier about transpose, but I kind of didn't answer that question that you had, so just to get that out there.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're basically two options. So if you have one backup belt, I would use that as the one as your insurance to tap. So to go 21 reinforced, tap it into the belt. Your existing one, and then so you can tap your belt from 20 to 21 with a safety net, so that you can, if it fails, at least carry over your potential and then safeguard it back to 17, so you at least don't make a loss on your gain. If you have thousands of Gollux coins, then you could just go straight up on the belt, or if you already have a really good potential on the belt, then you could go straight up on the belt, I would say. So let's say you roll, I don't know, if you roll like 33% potential or something, right? Something that's really, really hard to do eventually, then you might want to say, okay, instead of doing this project early, I'm going to move this project to late until I have all the other stuff at 21 already. That I have to buy Gollux coin backups for, potentially, right? And it gives me a longer time to get belt backups straight up as a drop from Gollux. So I'm going to wait until I have like 6, 7, 8 belts from Gollux or something, and then just really send it. Or just every time there's an event and I have at least 2, just try on the belt itself to maintain the potential. But ideally, you go just 2-line unique, 2-line legendary on the belt, because you know you're going to transfer hammer over. And if you have just 1 or 2 belt backups, if you had 2, I could say yes, you can try 1, and just see if it goes to 21. Because if it does, it saves you a lot of money. But if it doesn't, then you can still do the other way, 21 into 20, and then try to tap it at 20 to 21 with a backup. So you always want to have one on the reserve for that. Okay. Does that make sense for all the scenarios?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, cool. How much longer do we have on the session? So I don't want to...
Oh, you have about 29 more minutes. There you go.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
My next question was like, what's the general order? But we already talked about that.
Mm-hmm. It always comes down to like what is the lowest possible risk to end up with a downgrade. That's just what it always comes down to. So you always can go into the calculator and see like how much is it on average, how many booms is it going to be on average, do I have those backups? Then that's the one you prioritize essentially.
Okay. Question about cubing.
Mm-hmm.
I was told that if I don't have gear at 22 stars, that I shouldn't even bother cubing to 3 lines. Like I should just leave it at 2 lines. But that does not apply to arcanes, right? Because you can't transfer anything into them.
Mm-hmm. Kind of yes and no. This implies that your goal will eventually be 22. If your goal is really to be like, if not everything is going to be 22, I'm always going to feel like I need to work on a whole bunch of stuff. For me personally, a 22 is something that just kind of happens because I've played past the point that I thought I was going to get to, and you have a lot of money, and it just kind of makes sense eventually to do it. But for most of the time, for me, if I have everything 21, like CRA 22 will make sense because you just have like hundreds of backups at that point. But I start looking a lot once a character gets to full 21 or gets close at that point. I start looking at another character and see if I want to boost any other character, bring any other character from, say, like, the late stages of the mid game into the late game, and maybe start doing hard lucid and hard will. And maybe if your main character gets like 265 and your friend is still like at around 230, maybe he's like, I don't really want to get like carried in normal will, I kind of want to do these runs. Maybe you start working on your Dark Knight more, and you start enjoying your Dark Knight a little bit more once you get more funding into it, and then you guys can start duoing or forming a party with that one instead. I like having classes at like different stages where I don't have to get carried and I'm not the one who carries. But that kind of depends on if you want to go specifically just in depth with one character and go through to the end game, or if you want to go more in width and spread your resources more over multiple characters and be in different stages. And from what I hear from the people who have said that, it's probably because they want to go more in depth, and their goal is to like get to the Black Mage, Liberating, Seren, Kalos, if you want to go to that point, star forcing is definitely the way to go, and that advice is pretty sound. Although there's a difference between, if they say 3-line, specifically 3-line means 3 full lines of the stat that you need, right? So that would be 30% on under 260, 33%. Sometimes people say 3-line when, like, they would see your USDK ring, for example, and they would call that 3-line. I would always call that 2.5 line, because it's definitely better than a 2, but it's not quite a 3. I would definitely say that if you're going for like 21s and everything, it definitely is valuable to go for 2.5 line at least on accessories, because accessories have considerably fewer lower junk lines. So the general order is badges and hearts, biggest value, then it's accessories, and then I'll have to cheat a little bit, because I think I have like a, god damn it, that's not how you type that. God damn it. There we go. So yeah, these are more important. The badge heart and then glove is important, of course, for crit, like going for double crit damage, right? You can definitely already do that early on because you're going to keep the same piece, right? You're going to trace it over anyway. Then the accessories, and then it's like shoulder. Yeah, then it's basically everything except for CRA, and then CRA. But for CRA, I would always follow that advice. Definitely don't go for 3-line on CRA until you have a 22-star. That's 100%. I mean, I even advocate for keeping CRA like unique until you have 21-star, honestly, because star forcing is just so much more efficient there, especially with the amount of backups. And the cubing is very inefficient because you have just way too many junk lines, specifically with the hat and the top. And then all the other pieces are kind of in between. I would probably start working on 3-line before 21, but that's because of how I play, more in width than in depth. And for accessories, I would definitely go for 2.5 line at least before going for 22. Whether you go 3-line or not, that would depend a little bit on whether you feel like the character has reached the stage of the game that you want, is able to do the content that you want, and you're not really trying to do the riskier part of star forcing, but more the quote-unquote guaranteed, as long as you throw enough cubes at it, you will eventually get it kind of potential.
That helps a lot. Thank you.
You can, and if you want, you can always throw it into the calculator and see like how much is it going to cost me, and am I willing to spend this money? Yes or no? Because eventually it might be like, oh, I want to 3-line this item. How much is that going to cost me? Oh, on average 20 bill. And then you start thinking about your account. What does 20 bill get me on this other character? Oh, this gets me like everything from 17 stars to 19 stars across the entire account. Like, is that worth more to me than 3% stat on my main character? Yes or no? That depends on you. For me, it's always going to be yes, but for you, and depending on your situation, might be no. And as you upgrade more and you have more experience with it, those numbers will start meaning more to you. Like 20 bill now means whatever, like a character, like a clean item up to 21, right? But if everything is 21, like 20 bill might mean reasonably getting one piece from 21 to 22, or it might mean a boss mule, going from barely clearing CRA to maybe doing Lotus and Damien easily. And then depending on where you're moving with your account, money might be better spent one way or the other.
Okay. Follow-up question on boss mules. What would be a good spot to like park it at in terms of both level, arcane force, and then like generic gear?
Mm-hmm.
Like 2-line, like I'm assuming for gear, just like 2-line everything.
Yeah, you're looking at Lotus, Damien, everything below in like roughly an half-hour session.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, one thing that's going to be important to do that is having your Legion up to a certain level, preferably getting it closer to 8k, because that's going to be funding for all of them. That's going to scale very well. The second thing is getting access to guild skills. That's going to be a very solid fundamental thing. And the third thing is going to be having a decent amount of nodes that you can put into them. So I would say like at least 250. Anything more, of course, will help. Anywhere up to 500 is probably... More than 500 is probably definitely not necessary. That's really if you just want to make it super duper fast. But I think like 250 to 300 is a good amount to get a very solid start. Based on if you have all of that, the amount of money that you need to spend to like kind of like brute force your stat might just get cut in half. Because what that might do is it might mean that if you get unique or good... you definitely want your weapon, secondary, and emblem to legendary, right? And at least 2 good useful lines in legendary. But it might mean the difference between being okay with epic and a few unique equips versus having to get them all legendary on 2-line, because that last tier up from unique to legendary and rolling in legendary, that's a considerable amount of money. And if you can make up for that in all those other stats that I mentioned, that'll save you a lot of the investment money up front, and that will mean that the character will start generating income for you way faster.
I see. Legion, man.
Yeah, but so in general, most people park their characters around level 230. Some go for 235 just to get the little bit of extra. Yeah, and it'll kind of depend on how much you like doing dailies, because you can get a lot of free stat from your dailies just over time. You can park it at like the minimum requirements, you know, get it to like roughly like 14k, 15k stat, and then kind of keep doing dailies, and then easily get into like the 18 to 19k stat range, get closer to 20, and then really start capitalizing on that value, but have a little bit of a rougher time in the beginning, but just get those easy stats from the dailies over time. And you know, maybe there's like events where you get symbol selector coupons, and by that time maybe your main is already done, right? So you can just kind of like divide them over your other characters and give them a little bit of a boost that way. But that 100 stat per level is very considerable at characters around that level, so don't lose track of that either. But yeah, most of the time, depending on how fast you want it to be, people will look anywhere between like 15 to all the way up to 25k stat, depending on how fast they want to make it. And again, depending on how many stats they have to compensate for based on their Legion and access to guild skills and that kind of stuff.
Okay. I guess I know that there's not a real answer or right answer for this one, but how many boss mules would you suggest I kind of aim for? In my head, I was thinking maybe 3 or 4, but even that, I'm like, is that too many?
Well, you can always scale up on and make more boss mules. The answer I give, the non-answer answer I would give is however many you feel you have time for. So if a boss mule in the beginning legitimately needs 45 minutes to an hour, and you just don't have that much time to play, I would say just focus mainly on your main character and enjoying that and being in that. You're definitely in a different position, right? You're like running out of totems by the 10th day, so you have a lot of free time there. So you could scale up essentially all the way up to like, I think the sweet spot to like max out on your crystals and all that is like anywhere from like 12 to 14, I think. What it comes down to at that point, if you want to min-max on it, is your crystals. So you look at your crystals, you have 180 that you can sell per week. You look at what is the hardest content that you can kill. You can talk to the crystal collector, right, and look at the value of the crystals there, and just see how many per character do you want to sell. Typically, people start selling upwards of, oh god, what is the lowest one? Is it 8? No. Is it normal? It might be just the CRA ones, or maybe Hardhilla? Hardhilla might be just a little bit lower. And then up. I think it's Hardhilla and up. And then just count those, and then just see how many that is. So let's say, so we do check price. Do you do normal Gloom solo?
I haven't attempted it yet, but I'm pretty sure I can solo it.
Yeah, I think that's like the next step. Yeah, if you're doing like hard Lotus, hard Damien, and you're doing hard Lucid, waiting a little bit for Will or maybe getting carried there, like normal Gloom might also start becoming somewhat worth your time. Maybe not yet. It might take a little bit too much time to be worth it, but maybe duoing can already be worth it. Because even if you duo it, the value is like 124 mil, right? So if you're looking for the solo crystal, that's still around the value of Chaos Papulatus if you duo it, right? So that's still a good value crystal for sure. So typically people will look at, I think, Hardhilla and up. Yeah, because then you have Easy Cygnus that gets overwritten by normal Cygnus very quickly, and then you have Remru at like 13 mil. So if you want to like scale it up tremendously, thank you, Ramagdan. You start with this, so that's Hardhilla, and then you have Chaos Ping Bean, so that's 2. Normal Cygnus is 3. Then you have 4, 5, 6, 7. Princess No depends on how much you hate your life. I tend to do that one, but it's because it also gives you the access to rings later. But if a character is specifically only for Boss Mule and for time efficiency, you might skip Princess No. Kind of depends. So 7 or 8 depending on that one. You have Magnus, so let's include it for now. So 9, 10, 11, and then Akechi 12, 13, 14. So 14 or 13 depending on if you do Princess No crystals per character. Your main character is going to do extra, right? So your character is going to go into 15, maybe 16, right? And then 17, 18, 19, if you do well, 20. So you just subtract 20, you go from 180 to 160. So you have 160 left, and if you're going to do around 14 for those other characters, that leaves you with around 12, right? If you want to really min-max on. And then what some people will do is if their characters get stronger, they will scale up past normal Damien. They will start including normal Slime and easy Lucid. If that's going to be the eventual goal, that means fewer characters can do all of those. But then some people want to be like, I only want to sell crystals above, you know, like even the normal Cygnus and the Chaos Pink Bean and the Hardhilla crystals, those are not valuable enough for me. You know, I'm only going to do CRA and up. And then you see like, okay, that only gives me like 10 crystals per character. That means you need to do 16 bossing mules, right? So it totally depends on how much you want to min-max on it, how many times of a week you want to spend on that. So if you say like, you know, you roughly say like, okay, I have like 4 hours to do bossing mules. A bossing mule is at least like half an hour of work. So that leaves you to about 8 that you can reliably do per week.
Aha.
That's kind of how you want to look at it, yeah.
Okay, that helps a lot. Alright, well, I think that's pretty much all of my questions that I had written down.
Okay, okay. We can just go through the screenshots one more time and see if there's any leftover stuff that we might have slipped through the cracks.
Sure. Oh, I do have one more question
regarding
my hat.
Your hat, yeah.
Thank you. Is it? I know getting -4 seconds is like insanely costly. But a lot of my training, like, I really enjoy like low effort. I think everybody does. But my Heaven's Hammer is like 8-second cooldown right now, and then on top of that, I have Blitz Shield, I have Smite, like the Bind full map attack, I have the Will full map attack, and then I have my hammer. So I kind of just try to make training as lazy as possible, right? So would that 2-second really make a huge difference for me in the long run in terms of training? Or is just the cost like way too much to even consider doing that?
Intuitively, I think there is definitely going to be a place where that becomes worth it. Right? The question is like, where is that? 4 seconds, I know is insanely expensive. Yeah, I mean, you could always just if you're curious, you can always throw it into the calculator, right? Specifically from experience and people who are really diving into the numbers, this would be more of like a Paladin Discord question to be like, yo, people who are in endgame, like, when is this worth it? And they might tell you, yo, as soon as you've got like 22 star stuff, right? And everything is 3-lined, it's definitely worth it. So you can be like, okay, so not for me yet, kind of thing. I know for some classes it's more valuable than others, and it might be just a sweet spot at like 2 or 3 seconds, or like 2 seconds plus might be as well. Because you were talking about cooldowns, but if your cooldowns are below 10 seconds, it only takes a percentage, right, of the cooldown. It doesn't take the full seconds off anymore. So it can lose its efficiency there. It's mostly efficient for people who have 5th job skills with short cooldowns, anywhere between like 12 and 20 seconds. Like around there is like the sweet spot. Yeah, for example, or yeah. Because then from 12 it goes down to 10, which just for one line of 2 seconds, which means it goes down by like a 1/6, right? That's a 16% final damage increase on that skill for just one line of stat. That's so much value, especially if it's like a spear or something. So that's where it has a crazy amount of value. Like for Fire Poison Mage, you know, for all of those 5th job skills that have like around 20-second cooldown, getting all down to 18 or all down to 16 is a huge difference. So my Korean, hang on, where's Paladin here? Oh no,
I'm actually Korean, so I can read.
Oh yeah, well I could read it too, but I'm slow. Is this Paladin? Yeah, this is Paladin, right?
0.132. Yeah. That one.
Yeah, I was looking just for the last symbol. It's like Dean. I saw Dean. I thought it was this one first. But it was D with a G, which is an upside down N, basically, right? So it seems like it's a little bit better to have 2 seconds. But this is old though, right? So this is like, you know, very, very, very ballpark rocky. But it seems for 4 seconds it's actually going down, so it's not as efficient there anymore. So the most efficient for them would be to have one line of it. So again, I would definitely ask a Paladin Discord for confirmation. But what this reads like to me is that you can basically see a line of 2 seconds skill cooldown as a substitution for a possible line of stat. You don't want to necessarily chase it, but if you get it, you can count it as a line of stats so that you don't, so you have an extra out basically when you're cubing it.
Okay, cool.
Widowmaker, if you keep getting ads even though you're sub, try to just refresh your chat. It's weird though. I don't know why that would happen.
Oh, I thought of another question. So
Yep.
my gloves is, I have that crit damage
Crit,
line,
yeah.
and then I have the
Sharp
ice
eyes. I
skill,
saw that.
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So my nodes, if you look at them, my decent skills are all like very low level except for Holy Symbol.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's good.
I thought it was. I read it because I looked at the stats and it's like I gained 1 stat for pumping all of these nodes into a
Yeah.
decent skill. So I just disenchanted them and I pumped them into my like main stats. So now that they're pretty much set, do I
Mhm.
just chuck them in there, or is it even worth opening nodes on my character anymore? Or
Yeah, so if you... Okay, so there's 2 possible answers there. For some people, it might still be worth it. I think if you use auto buff on pets, then it doesn't really matter, because you get basically nothing between level 1 and 25 on those, like you said, except for decent Holy Symbol that you definitely want to level. Those other ones, level 1 or level 5 or level 15 or level 25, is so similar that I would just not try to level those. I would definitely, there's a few that you want to work on. For example, like Urda's Will give you a way shorter cooldown, so it will give you more window and more activations if you're doing endgame bossing. And the other one is Blink, if you get it up to level 25, because it gives you 1 weapon attack per level, so it actually becomes a 25 weapon attack. And later on, you actually put it into a leveled up slot to get 30 attack out of that. But those aren't really decent skills, right? Those are more like common cores, right? Common nodes.
Okay.
But the decent ones, yeah, I wouldn't level them up, and I wouldn't open nodes for them specifically. I would definitely start throwing them at the next character that can really benefit from them. This is a more extreme form of what I was talking about with, do you have 20 build? Do you try to YOLO for 3% stat on an item, or do you get a character, get a character from nothing to being able to solo Lotus and Damien, right? That's like the type of funds that you're talking about.
Okay.
Because, yeah, auto buff keeps it 100% already by itself, so you're good. I
Okay.
mean, yeah. Yeah, but other than that, you had no other questions for your Matrix, I take it, right? You know what you're working on. Probably
Yep.
Goddess Blessing, get that burst up. Weapon Aura uptime, that's pretty nice. So those are leveling now.
Yeah. I was considering just opening all my nodes to max those out as well, but I started saving them for my Ignition Shadower.
Yeah, it's fine to make that a slower process. And this goes back into the efficiency. If you min-max within one system, you're typically not min-maxing anymore in your full system, right? Let's say that you were trying to min-max on every single crystal that you were selling, right? And you started doing every single boss and every single character to try to get to 180 crystals. This probably means that you're not spending your time as efficiently as you could be. And you probably should have been doing other stuff, right? In a similar way, maxing out all your nodes from like immediately is probably, especially once you get to the upper end, like past level 20, you're starting to lose a lot of efficiency there. And there might actually be a lot of value that you gain by adding that value to another character instead and being able to make more money in the half hour with the bossing. I like to get new nodes a lot. I almost said I like to get nudes. I like those too, but keep it on in the DMs. To like around 20, because you're going to be opening nodes eventually, and they're going to keep leveling from that eventually. And it's okay for that to be a slower process, because as soon as you min-max within that system, there's nothing to gain there anymore. And I prefer to get all of my systems to like 85% efficiency or something, rather than to get a few of them to like 99% and a few other ones and leaving it at 80. Because it's always going to be, for all these systems that are designed in a way that going from 85 to 90% or from 90 to 95 is always going to be less efficiency, and it's always going to take longer. So if you keep all of the systems evenly and bring them up evenly, it's going to give you more value for your time. And again, to look back at the progression grid, that's when you'll see that you have your stuff maxed around like the end of like around level 270. So you've got like 10 levels, I think, to just ease that out, and it'll work by the end of those 10 levels.
Okay, it's kind of just like balancing out star forcing, right? Not going for 22.
Exactly.
Right off the bat.
Yeah. If you do that for one thing, the opportunity cost is just too high, and you've probably foregone guaranteed upgrades by risking slightly more on that one. And that's how the system is designed, because it's designed to the sense that everything else is already up to the same point, the risk is already equalized, so now that upgrade makes the most sense. But if you make too risky of an upgrade too early, you can do that if you really want to, but just know that if you do that, you're foregoing a more almost guaranteed or a higher chance for an upgrade. You're foregoing that for a riskier one, and when it comes to efficiency, it's not less efficient.
Gotcha.
As a fellow Pally and Grandis, I'd recommend leveling up Blitz Shield. Yeah, that actually becomes a pretty powerful mobbing skill. Because of the explosion, right, around you? Yeah.
I started using it really late. Like, I only started using it once I got into Lumina, and then I realized that...
yeah, it's like, oh, another AoE, yeah.
Yeah. It hit like a wet noodle at level 1, so I kind of just pumped a little bit into it until it started one-shotting everything there.
Yeah, and you know if you're barely one-shotting in Limina, then in Grandis it's not going to be doing much, so it's got some ground to cover. Though the Mjolnir's got the... did you get the extra charges, Mjolnir? Oh no, that's an ignition, right? You get an extra Mjolnir charge and a faster charge for it. That's gonna be nice.
I think our main mobbing skill gets like a, I think 10 or 12% range increase or something like that too. So that'll be nice.
Yep. Yeah, they're maintaining that line for Paladin, keeping it going.
Yeah, I think the reason why I chose this class to begin with was I was looking at all of the YouTube videos when I was, starting in Destiny, and I kind of saw that this character really ignores a lot of the mechanics in the game. And it's like a very unique, and also I was playing mainly as a duo, and so and he's a Night Lord, so I was like, okay,
that's a solid duo, yeah.
Yeah, if I can give you a huge final damage buff and keep you alive, then
make him immune. He goes into Last Resort, becomes an absolute glass cannon, and then you just make him immune for 30 seconds. Yeah, that's a very good synergy for sure. Yeah, Night Lord Pally is probably one of the strongest synergies. Just a 2-man, but yeah.
It just so happened that I liked Pally, so it was nice. We cleared pretty much everything we could.
Yeah, and then by the time you get to the point where you really have to get either insanely strong or you have to start making a full party, you find some other duos that are in the same situation, you start teaming up for Hard Lucid, Hard Will. That's almost the ideal scenario.
Yeah, it's really fun. It kind of made me more eager and more excited to play, just because I have other friends that I can bother now. I'm not always looking at my one friend. Yeah, exactly. Although your one friend feels a little bit left behind now. Yeah.
By the time you start like catching up to him with your second or your third character, and he's gonna be like, oh shit.
Yeah, hopefully I'll make it. I'll still be playing the game until then. But this game is like a massive black hole for time.
Oh yeah.
Which is a blessing and a curse.
Yep. Yeah, you can feel that progress a lot early on, and then at a certain point you'll feel like, damn, where did my last 10 hours go?
Exactly, yeah. But I think that pretty much covers all the questions I had, unless you see something that I'm missing. Oh, I guess one thing that I do have is for WSC, the balancing of the lines, right?
Yeah.
Would you say it's okay where it is right now? Because I was thinking maybe, hey, if we have a cube sale on Black Friday, I might, go for some triple line attacks, or let's see what I roll.
Yeah. Well, so the one thing is, for once it comes to these projects going past 2-line to a 3-line, on your emblem, you can basically consider this as a 3-line, even as a Paladin. Like I said, even though you have the extra functional IED, right? Because you can move your Legion grid around, you could move your hyperstats around, you can make this work so you still get value out of this as if this is like 2.5 to almost 3-line. And because if you move your Legion pieces around, essentially this becomes a 2-line attack, 1-line damage, right? Which is 3-line when it comes to a secondary or a weapon. In this situation and where you are at, and for most people in this situation, I would advise to hold off on pushing past any of this and first focusing on getting your arcane weapon and seeing what potential rolls out of that. Based on that potential, then look at the other things. Because your weapon could roll like, I don't know, like 40 IED and 26 attack or something, something crazy like that. Well, then that might mean that rerolling your emblem is probably the next move, as weird as that is, because you have a lot of IED, but you definitely don't want 2 lines as a Paladin, right? Because you're going to have way too much IED, and your emblem is way cheaper to reroll than your secondary, so then you would actually roll your emblem first. Let's say that the what's more likely is that the weapon rolls something, a combination of attack and boss. That basically means that the emblem can stay where it is now, and then the secondary probably need to be rerolled first. And then depending on what you get on the secondary, then maybe the emblem has to switch around as well. Or, you know, if by that time you've actually worked way more on your Legion, on your links, and your IED is actually catching up to the point where you're already good on IED, and you don't have any on your weapon, it might still be that your emblem needs to be rerolled before your secondary. Because if you look at the cost, rerolling 3-line on a secondary is kind of yikes. Specifically, if you're trying to chase 3-line attack, is very expensive. You'll pretty much always end up with 2-line attack, 1-line boss as a more realistic outcome.
Okay.
So yeah, I would do weapon first, and then kind of go from there. More likely, you're going to be working on, you know, 21 to 20 to transfer over for your superior and stuff like that, and working on your arcanes before you can really take on a project like going past what your emblem and your secondary are at.
I see. Okay, good to know. I just needed a baseline of what I should be looking for. But that, I think that pretty much covers everything I have.
Yeah, you can, yeah, just for shits and giggles, I guess you can throw it into the calculator once, right? And look at your secondary, red cube, legendary, I think it's level 150, and say that you're aiming for 21 attack and 40 boss, for example. Yeah, looking at 550 bill. So let's say that we're just looking for 21 and 30, right? That's going to be way cheaper. That's only like 1/10 of the cost for just 10% less. So, but you're still looking at 36 to 52 bill, right? If you're looking specifically for 3-line attack, you're looking at like 50% more, almost double, so 65 to 93. But if you're looking at the emblem, and you're looking for 3-line attack here, that's less than half. Or if you're looking for 2-line attack, 1-line IED, what you have now, that value is like 7 to 10. So this way you can play around with it a little bit and see like what is a realistic outcome and what would actually be enough of an upgrade for you to want to really commit to this. And yeah, like you said, it's mainly those, red cube sale, and you have everything 21, everything is like 2.5 line potential. You're really not trying to tap any 22s anytime soon, and there's a red cube sale. Now you might commit like a whole bunch of them.
I see. Sounds like I'll be skipping the cube sale then and just really focusing on Arcane and Star Force.
Yeah, it might be useful for like running 2-line on WSE on boss mules, for example. That's where it can get decent value. Or if you're trying to do 2.5 line on accessories that you're keeping as themselves and that you're not transfer hammering over. So it could be Meister Ring, could be kind of Treasure Ring, stuff like that. Sweetwater Pendant maybe, you know, those kind of accessories. But none of the, you know, 4-set superior, for example.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I think I just scrolled through everything. I think we covered everything. As always, you know, the progression grid you can always fall back on if you have any questions, and then those are always directly related to other commands as well, where you can get more of the details. And then if there's any question left at that point, you can always ask when I'm streaming, or, you know, through Discord or through YouTube comments or whatever. I try to keep track of everything. I'm still able to do that, thank God. So yeah, you know where to find me. I'll upload this to YouTube as well, so you can check it back, if maybe double check if you missed anything on your notes. But yeah, I guess other than that, you have any last questions?
No, just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate your time. It was fun, and hope you have a good day.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I hope the same for you, and best of luck on all your coming upgrades. Have a good rest of your day.
Take care.
All right, bye-bye. All right, cool stuff. We actually had the session planned for a little bit later, but he had time right now. So that allows us to do the session a little bit earlier. Oh, Discord is updating. Okay. You good, Discord? You're good. Okay. Yeah. So I will be going through the questions you guys have in the chat in a little bit as I do this little outro here. So remember that if you want one of these coaching sessions, you check the description of the video, and you can find what you need to go through to get that. So it's either through direct donations or through the prices are listed there in the chat, or you can request it with channel points if you watch my Twitch stream and if you're a subscriber over there, over at twitch.tv/Scardor. And there you also have access to all of these commands that I pull out of my hat sleeve or orifice, you can use all of these for free. They're all just available in the chat, both when I'm online and offline, so you can use those whenever. Of course, I stream daily, so whenever I am online, I can give you additional context or answer additional questions that you might have after reading them. You might find something that you think is wrong or inaccurate, or you have additional questions on. Always reach out for those. I try to keep it as up-to-date and as user-friendly as possible. So if there's an issue that many people have, even though I think it's not really an issue, if a lot of people have that issue, I will try to clarify and make sure that it is more workable for everyone. Other than that, you can also leave a comment on the video saying that you would like to win, and including your Discord name, preferably, so I can reach out to you. And at the end of the month, which is coming up in a few more days, we will be out of September, and I will be drawing 2 winners from all of the progression session coaching videos like these, and 2 of those people will receive messages and free sessions in the weeks to come as well. So if you're interested in that, you can do that. Other than that, yeah, you know where to find me. You know where to find all the resources. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully it was useful for you. And if it wasn't, maybe the next one will be, or check the playlist and check out some other sessions. And good luck on the rest of your totem. About 30 minutes left, 25 minutes left. So hopefully your last part of your totem will grant you many familiars and many droplets. I thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.